Chad Ochocinco. A name that sparks instant reactions. Some people remember him for the end zone dances, the trash talk, the oversized personality. Others remember him for his dazzling footwork, crisp routes, and the fact that for several years, he was one of the best wide receivers in football. But how good was Chad Ochocinco, actually? Was he just entertainment value, or was he truly elite, maybe even Hall of Fame worthy? Today, we're diving deep into the story of Chad Johnson, aka Ochocinco, to find out. And along the way, we'll answer questions like, did his antics hurt his career? Could he have been even greater if things broke differently? And why do so many former cornerbacks still talk about him with a mix of respect and frustration? Let's rewind before the celebrations, before the name change, before he became an NFL icon. Chad Javon Johnson grew up in Miami, Florida. Like so many future NFL stars, football was his escape. But what's fascinating is that his journey wasn't straightforward. After high school, he wasn't a five-star prospect. He had to grind through junior college at Santa Monica College, where, fun fact, he was teammates with none other than Steve Smith Sr., another fiery, undersized receiver who became a legend in his own right. Eventually, Johnson made his way to Oregon State, and that's when he really started to pop. His speed, agility, and swagger stood out immediately. At Oregon State, he helped the Beavers to an 11-1 record and a Fiesta Bowl win in 2000. For a program that wasn't used to that kind of success, it was a huge deal. NFL scouts noticed too. He wasn't considered the best receiver in his draft class. That 2001 draft included Reggie Wayne, Santana Moss, and Steve Smith. But the Cincinnati Bengals took him in the second round, 36th overall. And Bengals fans, well, they didn't realize it yet, but they had just gotten their future franchise face. Question for you guys. Imagine if Chad had been drafted to a bigger market team, like the Cowboys, Raiders, or Giants. Would his fame and numbers have exploded even more? Drop your thoughts in the comments. When Chad arrived in Cincinnati in 2001, let's be real, the Bengals were a mess. They hadn't been relevant since the late 80s. The 1990s were brutal for them. They were called the Bungles for a reason. But Chad, alongside Carson Palmer, began to change that narrative. From 2002 onward, his role grew, and by 2003, he broke out with 90 catches, over 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns. That season kicked off one of the best stretches of wide receiver dominance in the 2000s. Here's the stat that blows my mind. Chad led the entire AFC in receiving yards 4 straight seasons from 2003 to 2006. Think about that. In a conference with guys like Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Hines Ward, and Andre Johnson, Ochocinco was consistently on top. 2006 was his masterpiece. 87 catches, 1,369 yards, and he led the NFL in receiving yards. But it wasn't just the numbers. It was the style. He wasn't a 6 feet 4 inches jump ball guy. He was 6 feet 1 inch, 190 pounds, winning with precision, speed, and swagger. His route running was so clean, defenders often looked helpless. Remember the infamous route running masterclass against the Falcons in 2006? He torched Hall of Famer D'Angelo Hall so badly. Hall admitted after the game that Chad was one of the hardest covers in the league. That wasn't rare. Corners used to study his footwork just to prepare. One story that's legendary. Chad once sent Pepto-Bismol bottles to the Cleveland Browns defensive backs before a game. His message? You're going to be sick trying to cover me. That's peak Ochocinco right there. Of course, we can't talk about Chad without talking about his personality. In an era where the NFL was cracking down on celebrations, Chad was pushing the envelope. He had a prop for everything: Hall of Fame jackets, golf putters, even proposing to cheerleaders mid-game. The NFL fined him thousands of dollars, but he didn't care. For him, football was entertainment. He once said, "I'm not just playing for the Bengals, I'm playing for the fans." And love him or hate him, you couldn't take your eyes off him. But here's the deeper question: did all this overshadow his greatness? Because some critics dismissed him as a clown, when in reality, his peers knew how much work he'd put into his craft. Even Darrelle Revis, who covered Randy Moss and Terrell Owens, said Ochocinco's footwork was some of the hardest to defend. Audience engagement. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think the NFL was too strict on celebrations back then? Imagine how viral Chad's antics would have gone in today's TikTok and Instagram world. So where does Ochocinco rank among the receivers of his era? Let's compare. Randy Moss, pure dominance, deep ball threat, arguably the GOAT. Terrell Owens, physical, unstoppable, second all-time in yards. Marvin Harrison, the technician with Peyton Manning. Steve Smith Sr., toughness and attitude, similar to Chad. Chad wasn't on Moss or Owens' level in terms of raw dominance, but he was right there with Harrison and Smith when it came to consistent production. What separated Chad was his charisma. He was the most marketable. But here's the catch. Unlike Moss or Owens, Chad didn't have postseason moments to cement his legacy. The Bengals made the playoffs a few times, but never got past the first round. By 2011, Chad's time in Cincinnati ended, and he joined the New England Patriots. Many thought this was perfect, pairing with Tom Brady. But it didn't work out. He caught just 15 passes all season, and he was basically invisible in the Super Bowl. After a short stop with the Dolphins and a brief stint in the CFL, his NFL career was done. From superstar to role player almost overnight. But that's the thing about wide receivers. Once the quickness fades, the drop-off can be sharp. So, how good was Chad Ochocinco actually? Here's my verdict. At his peak, he was elite, a top 5 WR in the NFL for several years. His footwork and route running remain legendary. His personality made him unforgettable, even if it sometimes overshadowed his game. He didn't have the postseason resume or longevity to lock in a Hall of Fame spot, but he absolutely deserves to be in the conversation. At the very least, he belongs in the Hall of Very Good. But more importantly, Chad Ochocinco made football fun. And in a league that often tries to be robotic and serious, that's a legacy worth remembering. Now it's your turn. Do you think Ochocinco deserves a gold jacket in Canton? Or was he more flash than substance? Let me know in the comments, because this is a debate that will keep going for years. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like and subscribe for more How Good Was He Actually breakdowns. Until next time, keep your routes sharp, and your celebrations sharper.